the Industrial Innovators podcast. I'm Don Cooper, one of your hosts, and I've got my co-host and operations expert, Mr. Michael Brown, with me. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Don.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing really good. Today, we're going to be talking about winterization and out of the truck repairs. For the audience to kind of cue this up, I'm going to use the analogy of a really favorite old show of mine. Well, maybe not old show, but a recent show, the Game of Thrones, and their famous saying, "Winter is coming." And when people misbehave on Game of Thrones or when they fall out of society, they get sent to the wall. And the wall is this 900-foot pillar of ice that keeps everything else out. All the bad stuff is north of the ice wall. And as the mercury starts to plummet here soon, I saw this morning when I got up, considering we're going RVing this weekend, and we're getting to the point where we got to start to think about winterizing our RV. But it was 2 degrees Celsius in my yard today. So first thing this morning, we're getting real close to when all things start to freeze. Our clients, our industrial clients, and they've probably already been heavy into winterization. But one of the things that we find time and time again, Mike, is that they put off, they delay, they don't find it in their schedule or their budget to deal with nuisance leaks. And those things, much like in Game of Thrones, if you don't deal with the stuff north of the wall and prepare, they come back to get you. They become dangerous and they become expensive. So, Mike, talk to me about winterization and on-stream leaks and how customers approach it and how they should approach it.
Yeah, well, I would say the majority of these leaks that we're talking about here, the reason that they're not addressed is because they simply don't know that they're there. The majority of the summer, you can have a small steam leak, which is very hard to see in a pipe rack somewhere. And it could just be as simple as a 30-minute to 40-minute valve packing injection that if you don't get ahead of, by the time that it starts to freeze, you can build ice castles in the middle of your units. You can build ice castles around piping that's adding extra weight to all of the piping around it. And it can become a real hazard. So, I don't think that it's certainly not their faults, but they just don't see them. You know what I mean? Like you don't know leaks there until you have a visual idea of where it's coming from. So, I'd say that the majority of our winterization doesn't come until this time of year, early in the morning when you start to get a little bit below zero and stuff like that, and you can start to see the steam a little bit clearer. Those are always, pesky leaks that it's such a quick fix, but it can cause a real problem. And if you don't get ahead of it in time, you're also up against building scaffolding around this big ice castle. So winterization, I think, is key to continuing a safe operating unit.
Yeah. Kind of feeding on from me seeing it was 2 degrees this morning, when you were talking about, visually seeing it, and it takes a little bit of a cooler temperature to be able for these nuisance leaks to kind of show themselves and particularly in the morning, right, when it's cooler. I was making coffee this morning, looking out my kitchen window, and because the Trans Mountain pipeline goes right through my yard now, I've got a much better line of sight to the acreage subdivision that's right behind us. I can see one of my neighbors that I couldn't see before. And for the first time in months, I could see heat plumes coming out of his furnace. So he's clearly got his furnace running. And it was because it was near zero that was showing itself this morning. So this time of year, I guess one of the things that our maintenance clients can really be looking for, and it's hard not to see, is when the sun comes up and you can see steam plumes everywhere, ask yourself, is that supposed to be there?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if it's not supposed to be there, it's there. They have a choice, I guess, right? One is do a simple, low cost repair today, or a not so simple and not so low cost repair when it's -10 or -15 or -20.
Mhm. Exactly.
So
Yeah, and if you don't,
if they
like
don't deal with
anything,
this, sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Mikey.
Yeah, like anything, if you don't get ahead of it, it just makes it more difficult in the future. Like, there's lots of ones that you feel like it might be a real hassle to get to. If we can use our rope access team to go in and drill those packings, you can eliminate the scaffolding altogether, and it can be a pretty quick and easy fix. So with lots of our end users, we have several clients actually that reach out to us with a full list of winterization packings, and we will just, we'll book a crew there for a week or two. We can get some from some from scaffolding that may already exist, or some are at ground level, and then we can build the back end of it to get at it with rope access leak repair.
Yeah, we're kind of moving around a little bit, but we'll get back to some of the kinds of repairs. But you were telling me last week. Now these were more engineered repairs, but we did a couple of rope access jobs last week. One was at 60 feet, another one was at like 120 feet, and you know we eliminated all the scaffolding, which in the numbers that we were talking about, it seemed to me that the elimination of the scaffolding for those jobs was more savings than what we charged for the whole repair doing it off of ropes. Can you
Oh,
share a little bit about those two jobs without talking too much about the clients?
yeah, it was 18 feet of pipe that needed to be wrapped on an 8-inch line, and in a real nasty spot. We had, two individuals go up there, do all of the patching, surface preparation off ropes, and the full installation off ropes, and eliminated the need for scaffolding altogether. I would put the value, I'm not in the scaffolding business, but I would assume that that's, a lot of man hours and scaffolding, to put an 18-foot deck together 60 feet in the air in the middle of a unit with all sorts of climbing in and around pipes, right? So I mean, the value, I'm not sure what the number would be, but I know that it's high. I'm thinking north of 75,000 to build a scaffold like that. And we got in and out in 3 days, I think, 3 or 4 days, to do all of the surface preparation and installation.
And all off of ropes.
Correct.
All, all off of ropes. And now we did another one, which was, I mean, that job was an engineered composite pipe repair job.
Yes.
But the other job we did for another client was even higher, and it was an out of the truck repair, was it not?
Yeah, that one's a wire wrap. So we were able to mitigate the leak on a 16-inch flange with a 1.5-inch gap. Sealed it up in a day's time.
And how high was it?
It was north of 120 feet.
120 feet, and we did it off of ropes, eliminating all that scaffold. Or
Correct.
what other mechanism that they might try to get you up there with,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, again, we're not scaffolders. I was a scaffolder in my first year in this business, but that was 30 odd years ago. I have no idea how much it costs, but my bet is you got to build 120 feet of scaffold to fix a leak, or you got to build an 18 or 20-foot long platform, 60 feet in the air. It's tens of thousands of dollars because you got days ahead of time that you're building it. It's in
Mhm.
place for us or whoever to do the work, and then there's another period of time to tear it all down. Those are not cheap, right? Those are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And I think they make an impact around this issue, right? Around customers might be making decisions to not deal with a lot of nuisance leaks because they know, or at least they think, it's going to be a huge investment in resources for scaffolding to get to them. And so they deal with them when they become bigger problems.
Mhm.
But I think the moral of the story here now is dealing with winterization and nuisance leaks can be easy and simple now with the way that you've mobilized your crews with rope access.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can once we get rolling on site, we do all sorts of things where we can go out a week beforehand, walk all of the projects together, get permits with all of the packings on one unit, and we can do, you know, north of 10, 15, 20 packings in a day depending on how close they are and where they are. So we can get a lot done on winterization. Purchase orders in a very, very quick time.
If you can do that, I mean, and you're doing it off of ropes, I mean, the cost savings per location just
It
are
adds
insane,
up.
aren't they?
It
Right?
adds. Yeah.
Driving productivity and cost effectiveness just in the right direction.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk about out of the truck repairs, what they are and how they can be leveraged a little bit, because that's our term. You know, customers just want leaks fixed. They're probably familiar with leak containment devices, LCDs, or EPEs, engineered pressure enclosures. But this is another style of leak repair that is often misunderstood, but it's 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 existed longer.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way what we deem an out of truck repair is any repair that we can do same day without needing to go through any legislation, like any regulatory body. So we can come out to site, you know, drill, tap, and set an injection valve or use a peening chisel of sorts to mitigate leaks. So that's the main thing, is that it's leak mitigation. So for instance, let's take a valve packing, for example. If you've got a stem leak, we can come out to site. All of our injection valves are registered straight across Canada, and you know they have CRNs attached to them. So these fittings can be installed same day, no problem. And you would just simply drill and inject a valve packing. This is winterization that we're talking about here. This is same day repairs, and they can be very quick. We're talking about packings, um, flange repairs, so wire and pins, and you can do this from inch and a half valve, an inch valve, a 3/4 inch valve, all the way up to, you know, 36-inch big bonnets and flanges. Upstream line blocks, so if you have passing valves that you need to get sealed up, we can drill injection ports and inject a non-curing sealant, giving you isolation. We can do valve seat injections. You know, even line crimps we can do same day. That would be an out of truck. We carry a big stock of crimp blocks and hot tap bars that are all pre-registered as well. You know, you have a split line with 8 different cracks down the middle of it, and you can live without it. We can come out to site and remove that right out of service for you same day. Um, I'm trying to think here. There's another method that we had already touched on, which is wire wrapping. And what that is we use it for big flanges with a big gap. Let's say 3/8 or bigger, because if it's 3/8 or smaller in your flange gap, we would definitely suggest a wire and peen. It's just a much more sound repair. But if you've got a low pressure system, we can wrap stainless wire around the OD of the actual bolt circle, making it flush with the flange, and then doing an injection to seal off the leak. So there's all sorts of repairs that, you know, people would think, oh well, you know, we gotta notify, you know, APSA or TSASC or TSSA or whoever it may be, but we really don't. We can come out to site that same day. When you are starting to push into the registration side of things, it's when you have an actual fitting that's going to go around it that itself is pressure containing. So in all these scenarios, we're using sealant as a backing to push the pressure back inside of its original pressure envelope. We're not, you know, the intent of the injector is not to contain pressure, it's to inject sealant so that you can mitigate this leak back inside of its original intended area.
Right. So, I mean, there was a lot there. You talked about a wire wrap, which is wrapping the gap of the flange with wire, and you're just creating a pressure boundary so then you can inject sealant, right?
Yeah,
Right. And then
essentially. So
so and
the
so
wire
then
the wire wrap is for bigger flanges, and really what we're doing is we're using that wire on the outside of the bolt circle to keep our sealant contained on the inside and help seal the leak off.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've got a wire and peen, and again, you're peening the flange and or using brass rod and then peening in that gap.
Mhm.
But you're doing some physical damage to the flange with that, obviously, right?
Yeah, so the wire wrap, you know, there that's actually a great point. We can do injections with wire wraps where we do no damage to the flange at all. And we would just
So
do a
touch, so touch.
hot stud change out, and we can use injection rings, which is essentially just a nut that goes on the inside of the two bolts. You can torque that back up, and you can do it on every stud, and then you can inject through the stud cavity, and you just use wire to go around the outside. Wire and pins, however, yes, you will be defacing the flange by peening the metal over the top of the wire. Once you inject your material, the wire will expand on the inside of the flange, and then you that's what helps keep the sealant in the contained area there.
So we've got a whole bunch of components like injection valves, injection rings, injection cap nuts, um, registered crimp locks, and hot tap bars. These are all materials that are engineered and designed and built and registered, but they're not pressure containing in themselves. So they're not really considered an EPE or an LCD, and they allow you and your crew to do these other non-registered out of the truck repairs, but using materials that are registered,
Correct.
right?
You know,
And
there is the odd user, Don, like it is it's not black and white. There is a gray area when it comes to it, because in like anything, if you poke far enough down the rabbit hole, if you're drilling into a flange, essentially you're doing an alteration. I mean,
right,
for years and years in the leak repair industry, 95% of our end users would deem these, same day repairs, and we do, and there's no problems with it. But there is the odd time where, you need to submit an alteration form for someone, just, and that's up to them. It's their sandbox, and we can definitely do that too.
right.
But we do, I would say 95% of the time, just deem these same day repairs, and we're an emergency service, so we do these at all times of the day and on very, very short notice.
So a few different options with semi-damaging all the way to non-damaging flange repairs.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the biggest problems that, nuisance leaks are coming from packings and fittings and stuff that are leaking, and you start to see them and you don't even realize how bad they are until the air cools down. So there's obviously a lot of valve packings. You mentioned valve bonnets are obviously another one that
Yeah.
a valve bonnet is a very specific type of flange that needs its own procedure because you've got an awful lot of end force that you've got to deal with. But again, you're applying either drill and tap methods or wire and peen or wire wrap even on bonnets, right? So a lot of these techniques can be applied to valves, to valve packings, to valve bonnets, to flanges. Um, where else, what are some other examples of places where these out of the truck approaches apply?
Yeah, so I mean, a big one, like we've touched a little bit, I had mentioned it before, but the upstream line blocks and the valve seat injections, like we do, hundreds in a year. Like we do quite a bit of these. Um, there's there's a method. So if you've got your gate valve or valve of whatever seated, and you're passing liquid or product through, what
That's
we
the
can
valve
do.
seat on the valve is not holding pressure and you're not being able to stop or control flow.
Exactly. We can come in and we can do two things. You can do a valve kill, so we can inject a curing sealant that will solidify on the inside, and it will completely snub the valve off for good. You're not going to be able to open it anymore, and the leak will go away. We can also do a non-curing sealant, and what we really stress there is, like, we want to make sure that we have a full understanding of what's downstream when we do these things, because you're injecting sealant into the product or into the actual system itself. So we do a deep dive with our clients, make sure that there's no critical rotating equipment downstream, and if there is, then we will clear a very, very small volume to try it and inject first. So everything would come with a void calculation. For let's take a valve seat for example. The steps would be, we confirm what the pressure, temperature, and size of your valve is. We request UT or RT, some sort of way for us to gauge how much thickness is at the bottom, just to make sure that we can set our injector, because for any injector in industry, you want at minimum 0.222 of thread engagement. That's 3 threads. We always strive for more because it's just safer. We try and go 3, 4, 5 threads if we can. So you set your injection port, you can
Well,
drill
there's a very specific requirement for how much thread engagement we use with these tools.
at minimum. Yes, it's
Minimums, right? Now,
it,
I don't want to mention any names, but we heard about an incident recently in our region where that wasn't done correctly by someone, and it brought the whole plant down. You know, what was it? You told me that particular refinery went flat because of a big diesel leak, because some person only had one thread engagement and took the risk and it didn't hold.
Yeah, correct. It is a risky, it's one of the higher risks when you're going to set an injection port, is making sure that you have full thread engagement. For us, we do, like, there's tests that you can do. But for us, like, the biggest one is just making sure that you literally you know how many threads are on all of our injection ports. So you want to make sure that you have at minimum 3 set, and you should be able to, like, these things you should be able to tug on. You're putting a pretty heavy
Right.
gun on there and you're putting injection pressure up against it. I mean, it's a no-brainer to make sure that you have good thread engagement. And then, if you don't have good thread engagement, I mean, it happens from time to time where maybe one will oval, or you'll oval out a hole and you won't get a good tap on it, or let's say you break a tap. In all of those scenarios, that needs to be a stop and reassess, right? Like, that's where you
Right.
you put the
Yeah, I
job on
mean,
pause.
you, you've done a lot more of this in the field than I did in my career, because I did it as a manager, learning the principles, and I did enough leak repair to understand it all. And I've done some really challenging jobs, but you did a lot more as a technician than I did. It seems to me that through all that RT and UT and measuring thickness, you're making sure you've got enough base material so that you can drill and tap. And when you don't, I remember using, having to reinforce that with either standard or custom hot dep bars so that you could go
Mhm.
into that area because you didn't have enough area. So tell me a little bit about, like, how you can, mitigate when you've got, like, let's say you've got a stuffing box that has really thin wall and you don't feel you're going to get enough thread engagement with just a standard drilling and tapping that valve. Well, how does
Well,
that work?
there's a couple of options there. You can go upstream, and let's say that the valve has a flange. You can drill directly through the flange in between the two bolt holes and inject sealant up against the gate that way. If there is no flange and they don't want to drill the body of the valve, we can put on a 3/4 inch hot tap bar upstream and let the pressure bring the sealant down.
Right.
Um, there's also, some methods out there in the past where you can put it's almost looks like a union bar, but it's essentially two bars that go around the outside of the valve, and you can button it right up to the very bottom of the valve using the injector, and then you just tap maybe a thread or two in there, but it's held in place, and then you could do your injection that way.
Right. How it plays, it's
uh,
reinforced with these other clamps.
yeah,
Right. Okay.
all of the other ones,
Um,
that comes at a higher cost, we would definitely push to do, find a flange or a part of the body. Like, if you can do RT shots of a 1/2 inch valve and you see at the bottom that there's, 100 thou left, but you got, 300 on the shoulder, we can drill the shoulders of the valve too.
Right. Okay. How do you approach all this when you're talking to customers and sort of educate them about what's registered, what's not registered, what needs to be, what their preferences are? Because there's, you know, when I was doing this, there were no regulations around from ABSA or TSSA or any of these organizations around leak repair. It was all guided by interpretation of ASME code. But now we've got different regions in the country that have different requirements. And even then, at least from what I can tell, even then, there's still room for interpretation. There's still the customer and the chief inspection team of that customer, making decisions around, because they have, what's called an owner managed program. How do you navigate, having conversations to help customers make decisions on when they can use non-registered or out of the truck repairs with registered materials versus when, they feel they have to go in a different path, and bridging the gap with your expertise around, I wouldn't do it that way. You don't need to do it that way, or I recommend this. Like, guide me through examples of how do you help customers make better informed decisions around when to use more expensive and longer lead EPEs versus all of these kinds of repairs for winterization and for being productive and cost effective while still being safe.
Well, until we've, made a report, like when we've, there's clients out there that trust us a lot because we
Mhm.
do work for them day in, day out, and we're always selling them the right solution for the repair. But until we know, we have that relationship with the end user, I would just say that it's by having meetings and meetings with everyone involved. So not just the planner that might be reaching out to get the repair done, but getting the engineering group involved, getting quality involved, and then sitting around and really going through the project as a whole, it gives them a better understanding of what the repair is. And then during it, we can talk about examples as to why it has been registered or non-registered in the past. And, everyone can hear about a valve packing. Most people think that a valve packing would be taking the valve out of service and repacking it with packing. That's not what it is. So having these alignment meetings with our newer clients to just to make sure that everyone's on board and they understand exactly what it is that we're doing, because that's the biggest hurdle, I think, is a lot of people. I mean, leak repair has been around for quite some time, but it's a very niche market. There's not a bunch of people out there that offer it. And when you do, just making sure that everyone's aware of what we're doing, I think is the number one key of alignment between us and our
Yeah,
new.
for us, one of the things we look for in clients, we have three things we look for in clients that make our clients ideal. One is they're highly collaborative, because this is important, right? We've got to be able to talk to and meet with the right people on their team, not just the planner and give them a quote. We look for clients who have a strong safety culture, because this stuff is important. And we're looking for customers who are seeking value before price,
Mhm.
because we can be really creative with the solutions. And that requires trust, because we don't want to sell every customer a very expensive EPE. We want to help them.
It would be more often than not that sometimes, people will call initially, like most of the wire and pins or bonnets that I end up doing, from new customers, they'll call with an inquiry to do an enclosure. That's immediately what they go to. And we explain to them that like we can be out there this afternoon or tomorrow, whenever it may be, and fix this for a fraction of the cost and avoid all the hurdles of registration and their sound repairs. Like,
Yeah,
I've got wire and pins that are still in service that I did when I got into the industry in 2010. Like the longevity of these repairs are there for sure.
yeah. And I think that's key is, collaboration, looking for value before price, having a strong safety culture. That's our ideal client. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in terms of making us unique is giving customers a collaborative experience, meaning we want to have some conversations before we start jumping in and quoting and executing jobs, because we're trying to find the best valuable solution for the application.
Yeah,
If they don't need if they got a shutdown in 2 months, there might be more cost-effective ways to tackle this than a $50,000 EPE, right?
exactly.
Equally, on a value point of view, some of the things that people don't always think about is like we talked about this in the beginning, and we'll wrap up with this. Is obviously there's a lot of innovation around the conversations and the approach to find the right solution for the right value. But we talked in the beginning about innovation and value is sometimes as simple as let's execute this work differently. And rope access, I think, has been really interesting as you and your team have been deploying this with more and more customers. Tell me about how that's been going and how customers have been receiving and embracing that.
Yeah, it started out like anything, a little bit skeptical. I'll be honest with you, when it was brought to my attention to start it up from one of our technicians that was talking to an end user, I myself had my own, I've been in the leak seal industry for a while, and I was a little bit skeptical on it, but we put together such a good plan, and we really, really didn't leave anything out. We've went through all of the what ifs, I think. And I I just see it growing more and more daily. Like we're doing, as soon as we do one for someone, it seems like they are the main people calling us back. It's until you try it one time, then it really starts to bring you back inside the door. So
Right.
we've been doing a lot of it as of late, and I think that in the near future we'll be starting to expand on what we're doing off the ropes, to be honest. So like right now, we've been doing a lot of packing leaks. We've which is perfect to tie into winterization. As you know, we've done flange repairs and bonnet repairs and composite wrap. But we've been getting more calls too about, plug testing and pipe cutting if you can. Like if we can eliminate the need for a scaffold, why not do it?
All right. We've, when you were building this program, I mean, you know, it, it's simple, but not easy, because it's not just about getting some guys trained on ropes, right? There's
Mhm.
a lot of procedural safety and quality things to define. We did an episode on the podcast a while ago with Brody, one of your lead rope access guys, after he'd done his first jobs, and you were talking about, hey, we've kind of created a grouping of services that we're going to walk before we run, and it
Mhm.
sounds like that's been going really, really well.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
But but we had a plan for certain leak repair jobs, composite repair jobs, bolting jobs, some field machining jobs, and finding our feet. But you had to work and review safety procedures and quality procedures and tooling, and it's a lot more than let's send some guys to get trained on ropes.
Yeah, and having a hard line drawn in the sand as to what we're willing to do on it, I think is key.
Yeah,
I'm not willing to take certain risks, when things are this new. So, just doing what we know we can do well, and getting it off the ground is currently where we're at, and it's really starting to roll.
awesome. Any final thoughts on winterization out of the truck repairs and innovation and things like this?
Yeah, I would say that if to all the listeners out there that might have a responsibility as winterization, the sooner you get to it, the easier it is on all of us. We can get it done much quicker now than in -40, and it just eliminates a lot of risk in the plant when it comes to falling ice and all the extra stresses and weights that you can put on piping systems and whatever it might be. So give us a call, and we'd love to come help you out.
Awesome. There you have it, folks. Winterization, out of the truck repairs, some innovation, lots of talking about value and safety, lots of things for you to think about. It's late September, and the clock is ticking. As I said in the beginning, winter is coming, folks. And Mike and his team can really drive a lot of safety, a lot of productivity, a lot of cost effectiveness with their expertise. That they're way better at it than me, and that's why I do what I do and they do what they do. Mikey, thanks for being a host on the show again. Really appreciate it, and let's go hang off some ropes and fix some leaks.
Right on.
Bye for now.
Take care.